Chevy Beamers, and minivans. Over 600 cars, trucks, SUVs. Are you listening, man? Let Eastern Motors put you in a car today. Let Eastern Motors finance it all the way.
Welcome to the Cross Commission's Saturday Night Power Hour. The last Saturday night we have a Power Hour for the national semifinals. I'm Ryan. That's Jake. And we got the semifinals to talk about. We still have not gotten a cease and desist order from Eastern Motors, so that's a win for the season.
Dude, I'm going to ask them for a sponsorship.
Yeah, we're giving them so much free publicity here.
Like, this is like free advertising, dude. Like, brother, I'll start running. I'll start doing ad reads. Like,
you know, your job's your credit, Jake.
There you go. Minivans.
So welcome. Fords, Hyundais, Chevys, and Beamers. And minivans. They don't even make minivans.
SUVs.
Are you listening? To put you in a car today.
Yes, exactly. I need to get on that.
They also finance it all the way.
See, we already got it down.
Yeah. If you like that ad read, smash that like button.
There you go. Hit subscribe.
So yeah, we started a little early because for once we had semifinals that actually kind of were almost contained to the originally designed television window. God bless that first quarter in Penn State Cornell.
Yeah, the second semifinal started at
2:55, I think.
Yeah, 55. So I can't remember the last time that the second semi started before 3:00 ever. Normally it's been, as you said, after 3:10, 3:15. Obviously that one year that got delayed in 22 at Hartford. They played on to like 9 p.m. So
the marathon.
Yeah, that was a crazy day. Crazy weekend. But we got the same title game. Cornell's the Cornell senior class came in. That kind of, I don't want to say miracle run, but unexpected run to Championship Monday. They played one of the best teams of all time, gave them a hell of a run. And they took some lumps the last couple of years. Lost in the first round in 23, missed the tournament in 24 outright. And now that's fueled them all the way to a second championship. And we were just talking off air. It's the second title game appearance in 4 years for Connor Busick. That's John Tillman, John Desko kind of territory. Desko had a couple titles with it, but that's pretty heady stuff. What he's done early in his career, obviously very, very young still as a head coach in Maryland. I mean, it's fascinating. I was thinking about this. This is 4 title game appearances in 5 years for Maryland, which is, I think, the best run of the Tillman era. They've had
because there was like 1 or 2 where they missed. Yeah, the 2014, 2015, they didn't make it in that.
15 they did. 15, they made it 15, 16, 17, but they didn't make it in 23 or 24, and they didn't make it in 19. So it felt for.
Oh, they didn't make it in 18, right? Right, because Yale played Duke in that one. Yeah.
And the last 3 seasons have felt very. I think in some 23 and 24 teams definitely felt probably in the bottom 5 maybe of Tillman Maryland groups, which is still pretty nuts to say. They've got a home game each of those 2 years. Mark just said it. You could argue 23 and 24 the 2 worst seasons. And they might have been. Again, that says 23 team got a home game in the tournament, and then 24 also got a home game and made that incredible run to the championship last year. So it's the fact that they've just kind of continued this metronomic consistency is, look, everyone's still chasing Maryland in a way. And Maryland is but also, to be fair, Maryland is chasing, I guess, the one thing that's been, and they talked about it talked about it a lot on the broadcast. It's been the conversation, I guess, all week this week because Quint was doing the media rounds down here, and then I'll shout out Syracuse people on this. My YouTube feed, I had so many videos of like Cuse radio stations doing stuff for the Final Four. It was good to have Cuse back. It obviously very much galvanized and energized the fan base in Central New York in a big way, which that's kind of only they can kind of do that, have that kind of power over that kind of market. But that was the story. Is Maryland with a week to prep, and we saw it again, is a different cut. But Monday, like I got some takes on this, and we can maybe save it for later in the show. At whatever you want to say is Monday cuts a lot of. It's just a different beast for everybody. I think Quint did say best. It's not the best product, and I hope that I still think we're going to have a good championship Monday because I think it's a proper championship. It's the first 1-versus-2 championship in 20 years with Hopkins and Duke, which was a absolute barn burner in Baltimore. Or no, Philly. The 05 was Philly, 07 was Baltimore. Safe was there, I think.
Safe. Remember, tell the stories about the always loves telling the story of the 05 semifinal.
Yeah, I don't know if he was there Monday, but he was there for the rain delay. He always talks about Benson Irwin and Jake Byrne, as he should. I mean, that was incredible and
great game.
That Hopkins Duke kind of rivalry they had there in the mid 2000s was a big part of getting lacrosse to kind of where it did in that period. But I think this season, it screamed out for one final battle between any combination of Cornell, Maryland, and Princeton. And that's what we settled upon here with Cornell, Maryland. Again, especially considering the whole year, it was a debate between a lot of people in lacrosse is who's the real number one? Is it Cornell because they got one loss and they avenged that one loss? Or is it Maryland, who, even though have some missteps, look great in non-con? And now we finally get to answer it here at here on Memorial Day. Yeah, and I think JV kind of reflects me too. Maryland looks very good, but does Cornell keep that team of destiny narrative going? I know you don't want to be too romantic about sports, but there is something kind of romantic with this Cornell team. But at the same token, you got a Maryland team that's playing their best lacrosse when it matters most. They're the one team that hasn't been playing with their food this tournament, and it's showing. Get a chuckle out of Gil's comment. Gil, sorry for your Nittany Lions. That was a good first semifinal. Definitely glad those two teams play as much as they do because they produce good games. But yeah, I think I forget what I was going at this point. So I guess we'll just where do you want to start?
Cornell. We were doing just talking about Cornell, Maryland before we.
Oh yes, now I remember. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Ryan. There's only been 3 teams that got to number 1 this year, right? Notre Dame, Maryland, and Cornell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Notre Dame started off, and then it was just Cornell, Maryland playing hot potato.
And I don't even know if they play hot potato. I think it went Maryland for.
It was Notre Dame, then Maryland, then Cornell, and they just kind of stuck with it for.
And
but when they got to number 1, and Maryland was number 1 for a while too, so it was long.
What was it? Maryland was, I think it was 3-4 weeks. I want to say because they beat Virginia, they beat Delaware, and then I think they lost it the first week of Big Ten play. Cornell's been number 1 for like 2 months. It's been a long.
Yeah.
Like Maryland, I think had it for 2 weeks. I want to say. Or 3 weeks at number 1. Yeah, 3 weeks, I think, because they lost to Michigan the first game in Big Ten play, and that was when they lost it. But the thing was that it was often towards the end of the year, the ranking was Cornell, Princeton, Maryland. And you always had to think like, well, Maryland beat Princeton. So there was sort of a feeling that, I mean, I think I late in the year switched to Cornell 1, Maryland 2. But shout out Safe, ever the romantic. Pick Penn State to win the national championship this week.
To be fair, Penn State, gave a good shot today.
No, it was.
We'll explain it a little bit.
Yeah, I still think that. I still believe that this was one of the most evenly matched Final Fours we've had. I think if you switch the matchups, both games closer. Maryland Penn State would have been closer. I don't know that it has a different outcome. I don't think it does. Tillman on a week prep against the Penn State team they've seen 2 times would have been, I think, probably, 2 times. Syracuse Cornell, I think, would have been a pretty crazy game.
Yeah, probably would have been kind of like last week's game where it's just up and down, helter skelter.
Yeah, and so Penn State definitely had their cracks at it. They obviously gave a heck of a run, and I agree with I think this game Penn State has come really far, and now they have sort of it's good and bad. On the one hand, we've seen hurdles kind of weigh teams down a bit. Cuse, I think, is for how many years this Final Four drought. Hopkins, I think you're kind of seeing with Georgetown a little bit now that it kind of sticks with you. On the other hand, at least you have the target. If you're Penn State, you can get to the Final Four. This is the hurdle now. This is the thing they got to climb. Is this semifinal Saturday? So we'll see. Is that where we want to start, or do you want to work our way backwards, forwards? What do you want to do?
I guess we'll get the one that's fresh in the head with our 2 teams, with Maryland and Syracuse. Yeah, so let's run this. So, Maryland is playing excellent lacrosse as of late, and it shows here. And, the big advantage Maryland was going to have heading into this matchup was the coaching matchup, Tillman versus Gate. You knew Tillman was going to be the better planner of this game compared to Gate. It was going to be a matter of how the game would flow. And just like it has been, Tillman eats Syracuse's lunch money. But that
was one thing I want to. Do we know the all-time record between Maryland and Syracuse?
Let me look real quick. If you want to get to the point, I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, because they mentioned that Maryland's one of 2 teams, the other being UMBC, that has a winning record against Syracuse, and I'm like, I don't feel like that was the case in 2010, but these teams have played 8 times, and Maryland's won all of them. JB, we will circle back to this one when we talk about Cornell and Penn State. I will say that just briefly while Ryan's looking this up. One, I think the health of Kirst is a factor. If you look late in that game and you notice he does not really explode. He's not putting a lot of weight on his right leg. He's just he doesn't have the explosiveness that he did early in the season. To be fair though, and Gil mentions this, Alex Ross is a hell of a player. I think we had him in our All-American team. He's that kind of defender. He defended Kirst probably about as well as anybody has all season. And I think that was those 2 were big reasons. Can Maryland do the same? I think Will Schaller against Kirst is at 100%. That would have been to me like the most exciting matchup of the season because I think no disrespect to Bobby Van Buren and Sean Light, who were winners of the Schmeisser Award. And look, I have a bias here. I think Will Schaller has been the best defender in America this year. And Kirst obviously has been the best attackman. So at 100%, I think that would have been a just electric matchup and kind of defined the, story of that championship, which will be Cornell's offense and Maryland's defense. And, but if Kirst is hurt, it obviously changes things. I think the more matchup that will be interesting for Monday will be whoever covers Ryan Goldstein. So Mark mentions you're putting Schaller on a hurt Kirst. I think that there's a bit of an echo coming through, I think, with us. But I still think you got to. I would not be shocked if Maryland tried Schaller on Goldstein because Goldstein's got quick feet and Schaller's their most quickest defender. I just don't think you can. I don't think you want to play games with Canfield or Burlace on Kirst.
Okay, so I got your answer. Drexler has it too. Syracuse now 6-16 against Maryland. This goes back even well before Tillman. The only time Syracuse has beaten Maryland since 1997, the 1997 Final Four, was the 2009 quarterfinal at Hofstra. That is the only time Syracuse has beaten Maryland in the past 18 years. Past 28 years.
28 years.
Wait, 28 years, yes.
Yes.
In the past 28 years, their only victory over Maryland, and that's 28 years to the day, was the quarterfinal at Hofstra. Actually, the last time Syracuse beat Maryland was the 1995 National Championship game. So it's been 30 years.
So it was 95.
So Syracuse is
list the wins. List the wins. What are the wins?
So the wins for Maryland?
Yeah, no, wins for Syracuse. I know
1995. So 1995 title game.
Okay.
2009 quarterfinals. That's it.
No, I mean overall, like ever. There's 6. What are the other ones?
Oh, okay. 1989 semifinal. 1983, somewhere in the NCAA tournament, 1983. 1983 regular season. 1927 regular season.
This team's been around for a while.
Now, to be fair, the two teams have not played each other. They went from 1997 to 2009 without playing one another.
Yeah, they're on a streak here. Obviously, the regular season, they've played 4 years in a row now. Five, yeah. But they've played each other quite often in the tournament. There's 4 times, I think, in the tournament. 4? No, 3. 11, 16, and this one, right?
11, 16, and today, since the 2009 quarterfinal.
Okay. Yeah, in the tournament. All right. Let's go to Gill's point. Or Ryan, do you want to start? Do you want, because it's Cuse, or do you want me to? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I think it was Gate just trying to be stubborn with this game plan. It looked pretty good for the first 10 minutes of the game. I think Syracuse was onto slightly something. I think they were trying to push the pace and try to throw Maryland off a little bit. It was somewhat working. I think McCool making some big stops, definitely helped Cuse. But when it wasn't working, they were still trying to do the same thing, trying to create chaos. But it was But in that chaos, Syracuse was making too many unforced errors to make the chaos any effective. And I think instead of making the adjustment to try and, okay, don't get overcome by the moment, let's settle things down a little bit, play into your game, it was just trying to keep on doing the same thing, which, I mean, look, they're trying to do the same thing that they did last year in the Dome in a game, they lost in overtime. And
that game was crazy. Yeah, that game was crazy.
Yeah. But it's clear you weren't going to get the same result of that. And it was clear in February in College Park that wasn't going to work. And I feel like Tillman already had the book out on what Syracuse is going to do on offense. And Syracuse played right into it. So, I mean, look, on one hand, I know the game was out of reach, but the one thing I will say about this coaching crew that is a lot better than late stage Desco, this is a game that would have been 19-4 as a final score, and they at least weren't giving up a bit on it. And I know, part of that was Maryland taking the foot off the gas a little bit because they didn't need to be on the gas. But at the same token, this is in this NCAA tournament. The concern that I'm going to have for next year is in 3 games, they did not show up in the first half for 2 of them. And the one game they did show up in, they allowed 11 goals in that first half. Now, granted, again,
Syracuse didn't lead. Syracuse didn't lead at the half of any game in this.
Any game in this, yeah. Now, yes, Princeton Syracuse you could throw out the window because it was a complete acid trip. But the fact remains is the one game that they were actually prepared to jump in right away, they gave up 11 goals in. So I think that's got to be the big adjustment that's got to be made for next year. Is they got to work on the preparation, and Gates got to be better at the preparation craft, as well as a little bit with the adjustment craft as well, because you saw today Tillman make the adjustments, Gate did not. That's got to be the focal point because the talent's here, but we saw this a bunch of times. Now, I'm not as apocalyptic as I was 5 weeks ago with this coaching staff and what was going on with it. I mean, there's very few coaches that are going to outcoach Tillman, But at the same token, you can't make it that blatantly obvious.
Yeah, that kind of swing was pretty, and honestly, they got lucky with that one. The refs held Maryland up on the restart by like 3 to 4 seconds. Mark says game plan just is Gabe doing anything right? He's
yes, I think that's one point I was going to save for later. Is I think the thing he is doing right, program culture.
Yes, the culture is significantly better than it was. It's I joked about it on the podcast this week about with Syracuse making the women's change. It would take about a whole podcast to discuss the issues Syracuse had at the end of the Desco era. They were myriad, and it was not just on the field. So yes, the culture of the program is good. The players have bought in, and listen, that's half the battle. The other half is also half the battle, and it's a big half. This was my thing. I don't really think Syracuse did really get this game to any sort of chaos or up-tempo frenzy. But when they did, Maryland just punished them. Maryland had how many transition goals in this game? 2, 3?
Yeah, transition goals, quick restart goals.
Quick restart goals. And this was my point all week about it, is that if you give Maryland Maryland does not run transition nearly as much as their teams, but they run it as well. When they do run it, they run it as well as anybody. Their spacing, their decision making is perfect. They do not mess up on restarts. Obviously, that's where and in transition they are in sync all the time. For Syracuse to win this game, it would have to have been their best half-court offensive game of the entire season. That was the bottom line. If Syracuse was going to win, they were going to have to play half-court offense at a level that we've seen them do at times, but against, in this case, the toughest opponent they've had. And this gets to the point of, I don't think the problem was that Syracuse lost this game, certainly. And I don't even think the problem was that they lost by, what did they lose? On a 14-7? When it was like 5 goals.
14-8. Yeah, 6-goal game, yeah.
I don't even think the problem is that they lost by 5 or 6. I think the problem is that
you're playing Maryland in a national semifinal. Those things happen. Maryland's a great team. That's not any issue with how Syracuse did that. It's just that, and I think you're going to touch upon this, is you got to be prepared.
You got to be prepared. It's that you have to push Maryland a little bit. You got to make Maryland stress or sweat, or give something at them. Listen, Maryland's is our ultimate problem solvers. They figure stuff out, but you got to make them figure it out. And at no point of this game did it feel like, and that was, I think, Danny had this. Even when Maryland was down 1-0, I don't really think Maryland was. Obviously, they're not going to sweat. I mean, it's 1-0, but nothing Syracuse did surprise Maryland at all. It's like Maryland had their game plan of what Syracuse was going to do, and Syracuse did it. And to Mark's point, yeah. Look, we did this power hour in March, or February rather. And I said Maryland's just better than Syracuse. Yes, Maryland's, and that was true today. Maryland is just better than Syracuse. But I think Cornell was better than Penn State. I think we saw that for what? They played 120 minutes this year. I think you could say for probably about 100 of those minutes, Cornell was better than Penn State. But Penn State did something in that game to make Cornell have to work for it. They did something that changed the tenor of the game. At no point did I come away thinking Syracuse was doing even when Syracuse goes on a 3-goal run and it gets to 10-5, Maryland just wins the face-off and burns 2 minutes of clock, and then Syracuse turns it over, and Maryland goes right down in transition and scores. And it's like, okay, well, that's the complete...
and to Mark's point, too, Syracuse did fine. And again, I don't think there's any shame in losing a national semifinal to Maryland. I think it's just...
No.
Some things to bookmark for next season on areas that have to improve a bit, I think, is the main takeaway from this game. I mean, you feel a little bit disappointed that they weren't able to make it more of a game today.
It's not even...
But at the same... Yeah.
What did you do that made Maryland in any way actually uncomfortable? Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing. And that in a national semifinal, I think
you got to do more.
You just got to bring. You just got to do more. It's a good point here. Like Joey Spallina dodges Will Schaller into the body like 12 times today. What? It's not Cullen. It's not. He's not. Will Schaller is not Colin Molson. Will Schaller is not any defender that Spallina's had success against all year. And where is the adjustment? They would put picks in for Spallina. There's no conviction behind the pick. It's just a pick, and then Schaller goes underneath the pick, and he's still on him. Anybody in the chat, like, point this out. Was there any point today at which Syracuse ran a pick for Spallina, and they actually got a switch on a shorty out of it? And it wasn't just they ran the pick, and then Spallina still matched up on Schaller. They ran, like, I don't know how many picks, especially more in that second half, and none of them at least even earned a switch. Like, that's the point of the pick. The point of the pick is to switch the matchup, and nothing ever happened. And I'm like,
which I think that's a testament to Maryland's discipline on defense, but still, it's 100%, the effectiveness of Syracuse as well.
Yes, like even if you're good playing pick defense, every now and again when they switch the match, when they do a pick, you're going to get a switch, and now look again. And then. Where was the conviction on the dust? Somebody mentioned in the chat. Who had it? It might have been Gil. Like Leo and Roa needed to be guys for Syracuse. I mentioned it on the podcast. Like, dude, you've got to, if you are, if you were Syracuse, you could never bank on Spallina having the game he did last week. That could never be in the game plan. That Joey Spallina is going to go out there and have 4 goals unassisted in the first half. Ever. At no point. So now, but they mentioned this on the broadcast. Syracuse, Spallina, I think Joey Spallina has had, a lot of people made a thing about the comments at the end of last week, and he was fired up, whatever. I think Joey Spallina genuinely in the second half of the season, the last 1 to 2 months, probably played at a first-team All-American level. I thought he was tremendous the last couple months of the season. And I thought a lot of that was the way he learned to play off the ball. Go back to the Notre Dame game. The way he played off ball against Sean Light. And he would, if he did dodge, he was able to dodge off a ball movement. And then like get kind of ahead of steam. He was able to get out of the body of Light and kind of with separation. He was able to play off ball, and that meant he could rack up some assists shoot. Spallina's he's a great shooter, great stretch shooter. Spallina is. And so he could get some looks that way. There was none of that. And it had to be Roa and Leo, and like English, obviously it's difficult because he plays 2 ways so much. But yeah, where was the conviction on the dodge? When you dodge, you have to, that's the one thing. The Ohio State Maryland game's been brought up a lot, and like the way they matched up against Maryland Shorties. Look, that's probably the one bad game Maryland Shorties had all season. But where Ohio State did have success was that they dodged with conviction. They knew their game plan from the start was, we're going to get these guys on islands and go to the goal. If you're not going to dodge with conviction, you're not going to finish your dodge, then you're not really doing anything. And I just didn't see a lot of dodging with conviction out of Cuse. It felt half-hearted. I think that's the word for me. The offensive game for Syracuse was conviction. It just didn't feel like they really believed offensively that they could make things happen against Maryland. And that was my thing all week, is that there was never going to be a world for me where Syracuse got this game. Syracuse is never going to get this game to 19-18 like it did against Princeton. That was never happening. Could they have got it to 14-13 or something like that? Maybe. But even then, that was my whole point, was like, if you're going to give Maryland an opportunity to get to 14 goals, which they did today, I'm going to trust McNaney and that defense to make one stop and win the game. So the offense had to do something in the half court, and I just didn't see that. And then
they needed to play like they did in the Dome last year. That was their window.
The Notre Dame. I'll always mention the Notre Dame game was the game. That game against Notre Dame in the Dome, and the second game to a degree too. That's the recipe for them. The Princeton game, you had to throw that out. They were never going to dodge.
Throw out the window. Yeah.
The Notre Dame game was the one, and they just couldn't really bottle that. I think there is 100% something to this.
Yeah, I think there is too. And I know I'm guilty of it too.
But you're a fan. Like, you're a fan. That's different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, look, this is a great accomplishment for this program. This is a program where the Final Four drought was eating away at them, eating away every year. When are they going to finally get to the Final Four? When are they going to finally get to the Final Four? And last week felt like a huge weight off the shoulder. They made the Final Four. But I think this group needed to show more that, look, you're in Memorial Day week, and it's not just, I said it last week, and I know Jake was going to say, oh, that's, it sounds like loser mentality, especially considering, compared to a program like Maryland, where you can't just be happy to be in the Final Four, and you can't just treat everything as, everything else on this is just icing on the cake. You got to go out there and still expect to be a national champion. And with the way that this year's tournament was set up, you had 10 different teams that can say that they had a shot at a national title. So you had to go into that game with conviction that you could still win this thing. Penn State lost, but they still look like a team that looked like that they had the belief that they could still win a national championship.
Yes.
And Syracuse, I don't think bought into that as much as that, hey, we pulled off the miraculous comeback against Harvard. We did what we did against Princeton. We're the 6th seed going up against the 2 seed. Whatever happens, happens. You got to get in the same mindset that you're Syracuse, and this is a program that's won 11 national titles. You can still do this. Think about the Virginia teams, how low they were seeded when they won national titles, some 6 and 7 seeded teams. Just because you're a 6 going up against a 2 doesn't mean, give out, do your best and whatever happens, happens. You got to have that mentality that you could still be the killers that you were in the ACC tournament and against Notre Dame and in that second half against Harvard,
And that's,
and I think that's,
yeah, I think that because they at AF Health, what's up, brother? They talked about,
I think that they wanted it, but I think that's the belief of it. It's the belief.
Yeah, I don't even think it was it might have been just like a subconscious thing that the weight of making the Final Four has been so much, and it's just all anyone talks about. That once you do it, it's like, oof, man, thank God, But
and it is a big weight off their shoulders.
Yes,
but
it is. It matters. There's no question about it. Like it's huge. But they talked about, I guess, they asked Gabe about like stage fright or something like that. First time in the Final Four, and the thing was, well, listen, Gabe mentioned we play in a football stadium every week, and they have played in front of huge crowds. That's 100% true.
But so does Maryland. Maryland's the other team that plays in a D1 Power 4 football stadium.
Yeah, that's true. And I didn't feel like this was Albany is the one I always go back to when they played Yale that felt like stage fright. That was just the moment just awed them. I don't feel like Hughes was odd. I do just feel like there was just a lack of, conviction, spark, belief, enough to really win a game of this caliber. And I think that's disappointing. This is one of the more outclassing Final Fours we've seen. And look, Maryland's done this to teams. They did it to Duke twice early in Tolman's tenure. They did it to Virginia last year. That's just kind of what they can do to you. But that I think is disappointing. Like the game was 8-1 and Maryland was shooting 25%. It's like, ugh. And I guess let's talk about Maryland. Again, I said it last week when they beat Georgetown. The best thing you can say about Maryland is that this doesn't feel anything out of the ordinary. This is just what they do. That's the biggest compliment you can give them. Is I thought they played very, very well today, obviously. And I think you could argue it might have been one of maybe their 2 or 3 best games of the year. But it didn't feel like they were having to really work super hard to do it. And I think that is a testament to, obviously, the preparation piece.
And I think that's a hallmark of all their big wins this year. You think about it, the first Syracuse win, they worked a little hard in the first half, but then the second half was pretty easy. The Princeton game never.
The Notre Dame one was one that they really. It felt like they played like plus lacrosse. I think that was in some ways maybe the best game they played. This game, they were in total control in every facet. And listen, with this team, people are going to talk about the story all year long has been the offense. And at times it's definitely been valid, I should say. But one, I think it's worth noting, this is an offense that's been top 10 in adjusted offensive efficiency for most of the year. And this is an offense that, no, they do not have that number one guy you got to look at. They don't, if you look at the graphic on our screen, the thumbnail that we have for this video, it's CJ Kirst attack, it's Matt Trainer attack, it's Joey Spleen attack, and it's Logan McNaney a goalie. And so that does say a lot about this team. Their two best players are Logan McNaney and then Will Schaller, a goalie and a long pole. You could argue it if you rank their top 5 players, maybe one of them's an offensive guy. So that's true. But the thing is that they commit to the way they play on offense. They are going to take chunks out of the shot clock. They're going to play slow in the 6-on-6. They are going to play the ball through X. They've done that more like this tournament. Spin that ball through X again and again and again. And they're going to trust that we are going to make the extra pass. We are going to hit our shots when it's time for us to hit them. And we're going to play really genuine team offense. And that will work for you if you commit to it and if you execute it at the level they executed it. They had 2 turnovers, I think, or 3 turnovers in that first half. If you have 3 turnovers and you move the ball as often as they do, then you're going to get good looks on goal and you're going to create good offense, and they score goals. And listen, ESPN does this thing about Maryland's second midfield or whatever. Look, man, they got, 2 goals today from that second midfield? Aiken had a goal. Stovall had a rip. Aiken had another assist, I think. They play a lot of guys on offense too, and they're very versatile. They can put Ford behind the cage. They can put Keegan behind the cage. They can put Spanos and Erks up top. So they are going to stress you as an offense. That's what they're going to do. When their offense works well, it stresses you, and they make you play a lot of defense, and they'll push you into the fourth. Worst case, they're going to push you into the fourth quarter and say, all right, now we're going to kind of take our cracks at it. So 100% there's things about their offense that are valid, and if they lose on Monday, I think it probably will come down to maybe. I feel a little different about Cornell's offense now than I did a couple weeks ago, but if they come down to it, it might be that Cornell's just got 1 or 2. Listen, Cornell's entire starting attack is better than Maryland's. That's 100% true. Kirst, Goldstein, certainly. I think Michael Long would be the best attackman on Maryland too. Granted, he is like 28 years old, but their offense today played with they did not put the ball in the carpet. And that's the key for them. Don't turn the ball over, not just because of the defense behind them, but the the ball needs to spin and needs to move. And again, this gets to it. This is a good matchup for the Maryland offense. Cuse is a great on-ball defense. Cuse, you're not really going to push Syracuse's poles. Figueres is great. Dwan's great. Michael Grace is really, really good as kind of the air traffic controller. Cuse has really good poles. Maryland was like, we're not going to dodge Cuse's poles. If you dodge Cuse's poles a lot, you're not going to have a lot of success. Cuse's shorties are their weakness. It was mentioned a bunch in the broadcast. That's, I think, personally, if you told me what's the number one area Syracuse needs to improve next year as a team, it's the short stick defensive midfield. They have like 2 guys, and one of them Sam English. They have Carter Rice. He's going to the PLL. Sam English plays a bunch. He's going to the PLL. Then you got Jake Spalina. Jake Spalina
is really it.
Yeah. So that needs to prove. Maryland was going to go after those, but Cuse's issue is off-ball defense. I don't think Cuse communicates great as a defense. I think they get lost a lot on picks and things like that, or cutters. That's the perfect kind of thing for Maryland to do. What's Maryland's weakness is dodging. What's their strength? Passing, shooting, communicating.
And even though it was a game to throw out in the trash, I think the canary in the coal mine was the Princeton game last week.
Yes. How many times do we say Princeton is getting, every time Princeton threw a skip pass, it felt like they got a goal? How many Princeton's looks were so good in that game? The opportunities that Princeton got. And I think that's the Cornell game too. Look at Cuse's defense in the ACC. Now, granted, the ACC was down offensively this year, but look at the way they played defense against Notre Dame. A very good offense. The way they played defense against Duke, granted, not a great offense. The Virginia game, not a great offense. But generally, Cuse played. They played what? 6 ACC games. I think they play great defense in 5 of them. The ACC is a dodging league. A lot of focus on dodging, and guys get into the rack. It's to be good in the ACC,
and the Colgate game
good
too. Yeah, and the Colgate I think would be in the same category. Well, a little bit different with their offense, but not in the same vein as Princeton, Maryland, Cornell.
What do Princeton, Maryland, and Cornell have in common? Ball movement, ball rotation, spacing, off-ball defense. You kind of see this with, I would say, Virginia is a good example, I think, too. How many times in Virginia we said early in the year, out of conference, they struggle off-ball defense? Then in ACC play, they usually grew into it because what does Virginia do well? They have all those, Tyrannosaurus poles. So it was just not the matchup for Cuse in terms of the defensive side of it. That's where face-offs were going to be a big factor. Though I will say, I think Mullen's a very good face-off. I think Mullen's a very good face-off guy. But how often did
he had his worst game?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, last week was his worst performance. I mean, that should have been a huge exploit against Princeton, and him losing at the X was a big reason why that game ended up being what it was.
Yes, and I mentioned this. Syracuse's 2, I think you could argue, worst wins of the year. And that's a weird thing to say. We're both of the Harvard wins. Mullen wins 90% of the face-off, and I guess 1 win.
Yeah.
But the Harvard performances for Cuse were bad. This is 42, 48, 46 against UNC, Princeton, and Maryland. So I guess you could say in their losses UNC Maryland's matter. But I just think, to me, what this more says, and then you go with the 2 Harvard games where he wins like 90%, it never felt like Mullen's faceoffs were really correlated with Syracuse's success. It felt like he was a great faceoff man, but independent of how Syracuse played as a team. I never got the vibe that and I don't even think there's anything against Cuse necessarily. I mean, I guess you could argue it is in a way, but there's some teams that Yale with TD in 2019. Dude, that was everything. He was the central cog of the team. He gave the offense possessions, which had so many, opportunities, and he protected the defense behind him. The other example is Luke Wehrman last year. Luke Wehrman was the most important player Maryland had. Maryland could chunk time off the game because Wehrman would win faceoffs. They were able to prevent teams going on runs because Wehrman wouldn't faceoffs. Mullen is great, and I think, obviously, I think he's back next year, so that's a great thing to have for Cuse. But Gil mentions it. Every possession in that Cornell-Penn State game felt like Titanic. A team would go up by 1, and then it's Penn State went up by 1.
To this in a second, but Cornell finding its way in the face-off X really blew the wind in their direction. In their direction.
And Penn State was going on a run. There were moments in that game, or in the first half, or in the second half, I feel like Penn State could really get going here a bit. I had that feeling. And then Kaskin went they go up 2-1. Kaskin goes to get 2-2. There were a couple of moments if Penn State could win a draw here, get 3 or 4 in a row, they could have something. And Kaskin won some big draws to keep it at 2 goals, keep it at 1 goal. And then the Cornell run came and they won the game. So, I don't know. I think the way Cuse plays is just because they're usually so wide open and so frenetic. I just don't think that Mullen really is as important to their success as others. And I think that I think Maryland
doesn't take away anything. No, he was great all year, and he just had a bad game last week, and they still won. And I think that might have just that little bit of lack of confidence, but I don't think that matters in today's effort anyway. I think even if he was winning a bit more, I think Maryland just had the great matchup edge here.
And Maryland, this is one thing Maryland does. I think Maryland's done it better in the past on faceoffs. Their wing play is not great this year. In the past, that's always been something they do well.
But mucking it up and keeping the ball on the ground for longer, I think, helps in their direction too.
100%. And also, what they have this year that when Maryland hasn't been great on faceoffs, when they had Luke Wehrman, they rode Luke Wehrman like a horse. But when they haven't been great on faceoffs, usually what they do have is they have multiple options. And having multiple options is big. Especially now if you violate, you have to the number 1 faceoff guy has to go out. Having a number 2 guy is really, really huge. And so they've had 3 faceoff guys this year play pretty well for them at different points. None of them are like All-Americans, but they're all pretty darn good. Crater got hurt, but he was kind of their offense. He was a guy who could kind of create offense off the face-off. Keither's been a bit more up and down, but like last week, here's a good example. Last week, Keither went 0 for 6, and Carrier went 9 for 12. Today, Keither goes 9 for 12, and Carrier goes 5 for 11. Like one guy picks it up where the other doesn't, and Keither did really well against Mullen all year long, both games. So having two guys is a benefit. So they just it's Maryland. It's preparation, and they have every base covered.
Execution.
Yeah, like they have every base covered, and this is what they do. And the consistency is absolutely something to marvel at. Maryland's made 18 championship games. John Tillman's been there for 9 of them. He changed the program like this. Maryland is in some, not always because the championships aren't quite there, but there is a way they do it differently than everybody else, or not everybody else, I should say, but they do it differently than a lot of folks. There is a part of Maryland that does remind me of the way Syracuse used to be, in that Syracuse used to live for big games, like under Desco, and something like it was the brighter the lights, the better Syracuse played. But there was just the intangible quality that Cuse had in those big games. Like they were just kind of really, they got up for it, and Maryland gets up for it, and they do it in their own way. They're not going to go out and try and score 15. Well, look, when they have the team to do it, they're going to go and run with you. But in the details, in the middle of the field, restarts, transition opportunities, taking a timeout the way Tillman did, they are just so dialed in, and it creates them. They play free. They never play nervous because they feel like they're going to be ready for everything. And in big games, Final Four, and of course, obviously experiences. So they've been there so many times. We always mention if you get there young and early, your guys get reps. I think Maryland making it last year was huge because a lot of these guys weren't there in 22. They didn't play in 22, but they got there last year and they got a win. They got to Monday, and now that group can basically be like, all right, well, last year we lost. This year we're going to push to go one further. And so, yeah, they just live for these big games and moments because the way they cover all the spots. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes on Monday. I can only be, as a Maryland fan, I can only say, if you're another Maryland fan out there, I think all Maryland fans kind of feel this way, but I really think you should 100% feel like, dude, it's never going to be like this again. I think that there's ways Tillman has changed Maryland's program and improved it in many ways, and I think that whoever's next, like when he leaves, whenever he does, and look, he's probably got another long run ahead of him with the age, but I just want to be like anybody else hoping to make the Final Four. Doing this is nuts. It's nobody else is doing this. And so you got to be like, look, like being able to say we could take your team picture at the Final Four in 2025 is not the way it's supposed to be. Like that's something that they did that Syracuse and Princeton and Hopkins did in the 2000s and the 90s. And Virginia.
When there was 12 teams.
Yeah, 12 teams too. Like 16
12
teams
era. And about 6 or 7 of them invested in lacrosse.
Like it's special, man. It's being look, yeah, they're 2-6 on Memorial Day, and that sucks. I'd love to be better than 2-6. I'd love to have 4 of them, or 5. But it's a 50-50 shot every year. Maryland's going to play the maximum number of games possible, and that's what we get in for, right? You want to see your team. You want to see your team play. You want to have your team for as long as possible. That's the goal. Have your team for as long as possible. And if you're a Maryland fan, you have gotten your team for 3 months or almost 4 months every season, basically. That's it, man. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, just to put a bow on this on the Syracuse end too. Ask about Syracuse being back. Gary Gates said they took the first step to getting the Final Four, but walking to that locker room, no one's happy to just be here. Good. I like the mentality this program has.
That's got to be
I like message. What I see there because that's going to fuel them for next year. So I take heart at that. And again, that as much as I criticize Gate and the coaching staff with some of their adjustments and preparation, this is what I mean about the culture and instilling that mentality in that program, and that it makes a big difference with this program. And that's the rocket fuel I want for next year. Yeah,
and look, teams overcoming adversity, or like not adversity is the wrong word, but it's a story. That little bit, the margins between these teams are so close. Notre Dame from 22 to 23, Cornell potentially from 24 to 25. Maryland in a different way, losing that what is it? 21, losing that way at Virginia in 21, then doing 21. Mark asked, are they going to have the dudes next year? The starters, they will. Like, it's a very junior heavy team. I mentioned like my concern is, are you going to have the depth? Second midfield, short stick D midi. Look, Spallina's back. Hiltz is gone, but you get Thompson back. You get, I think, Leo back, Roa back. Anderson was a young guy who had success. Defensively, I think they got some. I still think they got a couple.
Dwan's back.
Dwan's back. McCool was a real bright spot for them this year.
Yeah, like, McCool's going to be back. So
Mullen. So they got a good nucleus. Look, they'll be in the top 5 next year. So to start, and that's all you can kind of ask for. But English is a huge loss.
English is the big loss, yeah, because he really ended up being the heart and soul of this team.
Yes, and he does. Again, he covered up a lot of their deficiencies with how kind of light they were at defensive midfield. So yeah, I think that's Cuse, and I think the mentality they have is pretty good. I remember 2021, the way they started the year, and I don't have any problem with confidence. At the Desco's last year, at the beginning of the year, when you asked the players, it was like, oh, it's championship or bust. It's like, it's a little tricky to say that when you've never been to the Final Four. Like it, and this group, this group embraced
and that group can spontaneously combusted for more reasons than just on the field. But
yes, and I think this group embraced the expectations more than they tried to, I don't know the word. Like, look, Spallina did his thing, and I think, people are gonna. I think he earned that moment.
But that's heat of the moment in a 1918 bowl.
Yeah, and he earned it. He earned it in that spot. He played great in that game. He earned it in that, way. I don't think they really sought out the, oh yeah, we're gonna make the Final Four. This is what we have to do. So I think it's good. And yeah, for Maryland, it was just another great Saturday at the Final Four, and I do definitely. This is. It wasn't talked about a lot, but I saw some of this said by some Maryland people this week. They took last year's loss on Memorial Day a little tough. Not because they lost, but I think losing the way they did to Notre Dame, I think they were kind of pissed off about it. I think they were it was like we did ourselves a disservice the way we lost. We didn't put up, and I don't think that was anything. Look, someone was going to lose to Notre Dame last year, and they had the honor of doing it. But I think that there was a feeling for them of that was yucky, dude. We lost by 10 goals or whatever it was. I think it was the biggest margin of victory in a championship game or something like that. It really, I think it bothered them. And I think that they have this year getting back. I think, I think that kind of did fuel them this year. That it really pissed them off the way they played. And they'll get their chance on Monday to redeem it. All right, let's talk Cornell-Penn State.
Yeah, Cornell-Penn State, the chat was going, having a little side conversations about it, so we'll hit upon it. So Cornell, very much not their best offensive day, but if you're the Big Red, you get CJ Kurtz double bageled and you still win. I think that's a testament to that this team is way more than just CJ Kurtz. I think one of the better defensive performances I've seen out of this Big Red team. I think they've grown on the defensive end as this tournament's gone along. And I think it's a matter that, they were talking about it during the telecast. This is a team that shares the ball a lot, and you got other guys that can step up. And as Gil says, the big X factor too, Wyatt Kuhn, incredible in that. But it goes to show you that this Cornell team is not just a boat racer. They could find other ways to get victories too, and that's why they've now beaten every team they've played up to this point on the schedule, and that's why they're going to have a shot to finally reverse the curse of 77 on Monday.
Keep finding new ways to win. I do think there's a vibe of this Cornell team that is. I said that, and I said it with Safe on Wednesday. They're a front runner, but not in a bad way. There's teams who are front runners and they get punched in the mouth and they struggle. This team's a front runner in that if you let them get out ahead of you, man, that might be lights out. The game might be done. The credit to Penn State, they clawed their way back into it. But this team has shown, some grit and some ability to just do enough. I think it's a testament to Busick and senior leadership, an experienced bunch that got, again, we talked about it, getting to the Final Four early, got to the Final Four. A lot of them as freshmen in 2022, played one of the best teams ever in Maryland and gave a hell of a performance. And now they have the chance. They're going bookend championship games. And the chance to end, obviously, put up, a banner at Showcroft Field.
And if you think about that, avenge that loss against Maryland, just like they avenged that early season loss to Penn State. So that kind of could be, again, as I said at the beginning of the stream, there's something romantic about this Cornell Big Red team.
Yeah, I think we always like teams that face adversity. I think that's something about sports that's just, in general, is when you see teams knock at the door and knock at the door and knock at the door. And Cornell's been a little odd in kind of their journey, but they had adversity. They've had a journey. They made it as freshmen to the Final Four at the championship game, and then they didn't win a tournament game the next 2 years. That team in 2023 that was great for much of the year, and then something just tripped them up towards the end, and they lost to Michigan in the first round. And then last year's team, where Mark can attest to this in the chat, literally everything that had to go wrong for them to miss the tournament went wrong. And they missed out on a shot at another run last year. And I'm not saying that as like they got screwed or anything, but just they kind of left some food on the table, meat on the bone. And now
Michigan and Princeton came by and took it and ate it.
Yep. And now as seniors, they took advantage of, listen, returning production is returning production. That's all it means. It just means you have guys back from last year. Doesn't mean they're going to be the same guys this year. Doesn't mean your team's going to be better because you have guys come back. We have seen teams who have been senior heavy and who have had a bunch of guys come back from the year before, and it's not the same. Maryland is a good example of this in a way. 2013 Maryland, the team that made the championship 2 years in a row, was stacked with seniors. That was Jesse Bernhardt's senior year. They came in like, I think, number one in the country. And they lost in the first round of the tournament. I would say definitely, to me, the worst Tillman Maryland team. Something just didn't click for that group as seniors, even bringing everything back. We talked about Syracuse 21 just a couple minutes ago. Actually bringing it together into a whole team and making this count is hard. And especially in this year, I don't know if they are. I don't think as a team they're on the level of Maryland at 22, obviously, or Notre Dame last year. But 16-1 is 16-1 in a year this year is wide open. And we've talked at length about, you could say there's 5 teams, or no, sorry, not 5 teams, 8, 9 teams that maybe could win a championship. They've been number one for 2 months. And once they got to number one, I said it on the pod at one point. I forget. Mark might have been on that pod on one of the bracketology shows. I said, I don't think anybody is winning out the rest of the season. And I'm correct as of right now, except for Cornell, who I said, I don't think they're going to win out. They got a chance to go, what? I don't know what it'd be, 13, 14 wins in a row, something like that, to win the championship. I said, I don't think anybody's going to win out. 2, 3, 4, and so I was correct. But
14 in a row it would be if they win.
Yeah, and this is true. I'm kind of giving myself credit here. I took it to, I meant regular season, but nonetheless, they still went through that. They went through the Ivy League.
Yeah, I mean, and they had that stretch. They had Syracuse in a neutral site and Harvard and Boston back-to-back weeks. Those were huge landmines they had to get over. And they had to fight Princeton again in the Ivy League championship.
Yep, and they've knocked down every hurdle up to this point. So, yeah, I think Mark's right. Richmond did do it. And those two teams played in the quarterfinal. So this game, I thought Penn State did a lot right. I think that should be mentioned. They did a lot right. I thought Frasian played really well. I think
one of his best games in a while.
Yeah, I thought he played really. He made some big stops. They kind of hung him out and this is where I'll get to what they did wrong. Man, he was staring down the freaking like cannon sometimes, man. Kelleher had like 3 shots. Time in room, hands free. Can't do that to that guy.
Yeah, the amount of howitzers that were over 85 miles an hour that Cornell was just
so
laying on him.
But I thought Penn State controlled tempo really well in the first half. The game didn't get too spread out, too run. You can't let Cornell run. We saw it. Cornell was so good. Those pulls for Cornell in transition offense. That was the difference in the game. Cornell, one long pole goal, one long pole assist, I think. Staub had 1 and 1. So some transition opportunities for Cornell that they got. But Penn State did a good job buttoned up in the first half. I thought Alex Ross was terrific on CJ Kirst again. So I thought they did a lot right. If you told me this game was 11-9, I honestly probably would have thought Penn State wins. Going in.
Or after the first quarter, the score was 1-0.
And in hindsight, I do wonder.
I did say, though, in our DMs after that first quarter, it's like Penn State played an excellent, like that defense, that's a perfect first quarter to limit Cornell to just 1 goal. But it feels ominous that they didn't score themselves in that quarter where they only scored 1 goal.
And who held up in that first quarter was White Nust. He made some big saves. And it's not that Cornell went on a run and immediately, you didn't immediately felt it because Penn State came out and did take advantage of they finally kind of broke down the dam a bit after the second quarter. They go up 4-2. But if you think about it, Cornell had their run in this game where they really tilted the field. Gil mentions Kaskinen. Penn State, they did it again, that like 2 to 3 minute possession where they got the restarts and they body blowed them. That when they got up 7-6, Penn State's defense that really took a lot out of Penn State's defense. Penn State's defense played so much in the third quarter that I mentioned this, I wasn't sure if they should have gone zone because Cornell's zone offense is so good. But to be fair, Penn State's zone defense did it again. But it was almost, I feel like, out of kind of similar to last week against Notre Dame. I think they had no other option. They were not going to hold. Their legs were really struggling. So Cornell, in their big run, scored, 5 goals? They went from down 6-5 to up 10-6. Penn State Penn State was really tilting the field in the first quarter. How many shots did they have? Nuss made 6 saves in the first quarter. And Penn State was down 1-0. If Penn State wins that first quarter 2-1, we're in overtime. That was Penn State's best.
Penn State wins 3. Yeah. Penn State wins that quarter 3-1. They win the game.
Yes, that was Penn State's best lacrosse of the entire game. I really thought. I know they had the 3-goal run. They played zone. But the best lacrosse I thought Penn State played was the first quarter. They got better looks. Cornell really got nothing going offensively until right at the end with that quick restart. That was where, in hindsight, it kind of does. You kind of got to look at it and say, man, that was a real moment to at least give yourself a lead. Because, again, the game was close. You didn't have to win it 5-1. You could have been up 2-1, 3-1, and you would have been right in this game towards the end. Maybe you have a chance with the ball. And look, Tams was saving that timeout at the end for basically the last possession. If you're down 1 goal, you don't have to save that timeout. You could have one. You could take the timeout and only need 1. So what I thought Penn State did not do well. You mentioned it. How many times did Cornell have hands-free, feet set, 80, 90 yards a shot? How many times did Penn State have that in the game?
Yeah.
Liam Matthews was phenomenal for Penn State.
Yeah, Matthews had a great game, but you're not to use this term because I know you hate using it all the time. Your alpha's Matt Trainer.
But not even him.
You need him to feast.
What was Lehman's stat line? What was Hunter
Lehman's stat line? Lehman, 1 goal, 0 assists.
Lehman, 1 goal, 0 assists. Hunter Aquino, granted, they said playing hurt. And also a freshman playing into May 24th. Hunter Aquino, double bagel.
double bang.
Trainer Aquino Lehman is Penn State's 3 best players. They got 3 goals out of him. Not just 3 goals. How many assists?
One assist for nothing from Lehman, and no assist from Trainer either.
So 3 goals and no assists from their 3 best players.
Yeah, and 1 assist from Wallstrom. No goals out of Wallstrom.
So my point, like Penn State, it felt when they would dodge and then they would reverse the ball, and it felt like conviction. It needed to be more decisive. Dodge, ball rotation, shoot. Pick, get the pick, shoot. Cornell was clogging the interior. Both these teams really, and Mark's right. Cornell's best player was 0-0. So here's what I'll say about this. Cornell's best player was 0-0. What was Goldstein and what was, Michael Long? I think Penn State needed Trainer a little bit more, I think, than Cornell needed Kirst. I like Cornell's pieces a little bit more than I do the secondary. Michael Long, 2 goals, 3 assists. Huge game. Goldstein had just 1 goal. But Michael Long, there you go. Michael Long's the 3rd attackman on that team. That's Cornell's strength, that attack unit. The 3rd guy had 5 points. Gil, he took some hits. I think he forced it a bit early. The picks, it just needs to be more picks. Play him from X more. I agree. When the whole point of the defense packing it in is they want to take away the interior. They're not going to give up the inside shot. They'll give up the outside shot. If you have your crease guy score 4 goals, the perimeter should be open. Like you should then be able to get more opportunities on the perimeter. And it just felt like that never happened for Penn State. It felt like on the perimeter they had to work so hard. This is where Cornell's defense, and I talk about Cornell's defense. I'll mention more invert. I think they need to invert the shorties more. Go at the shorties, target them. Cornell's poles are really good. Singer, Staub, Wallace. Cornell's poles are good on ball. Where Cornell struggles is, and we'll see this if this plays a role on Monday, their short stick defensive midfield. Their depth at the rope unit. That's, I think, the weakness that I see for Cornell. And I just think Penn State got too caught up in kind of the ball just died in sticks too much and too much Trainer sweeping. And like across the perimeter against poles. They didn't get Trainer on shorties enough. And again, when they did do a couple times, they got a pick and then they shot and it was good offense. It just wasn't, enough. I felt for Penn State offensively. They just didn't have enough. This is where you got to give Jordan Stevens for Cornell a bunch of credit. We always talk about adjustments for Penn State. I just don't think they had enough adjustments for what Cornell was doing offensively.
Mm-hmm.
And face-offs.
They ended up playing a big role for Cornell.
16 to 24.
Now, the concern though for the Big Red is going to be, can they get CJ Kirst to produce on Monday? Because it's clear after the past 2 weeks that there's something nagging them.
Yes.
You said it, that it's going to be something like, when all is said and done, we're going to get the NHL playoff injury list after the Stanley Cup final, that all these guys are, all banged up and everything. The secondary scoring's great, but they're going to need Kirst to produce again the next game against Maryland. So
I think if you're Cornell, I guess the question you ask yourself is AF Health answer. I think it was both. I thought he did a good job he always does. And this is where I think you notice all year long, he's been so good off ball. But to play off ball, you got to move around a lot. And he kind of seems just very stationary. He's staying more. He's not today. I don't think we really ever saw him behind the cage at X. he's just kind of in that one spot on the right, on the left wing. And he doesn't feel to be moving the same way. Look, it should not take away from Alex Ross. Alex Ross played a great game. Alex Ross played a great game on CJ Kurtz the first time. Penn State's defense played very well. So I don't want to take away from what Penn State did by any means. Gil mentioned this going up against the lefty. Could be. Yeah, that's an interesting point. But for Cornell, I think the question you ask yourself is, if you looked at this, Mark says, go watch his first goal against Richmond. His right leg looks soft. That was what I first noticed. It's the right leg. There's a moment at the end of the game where he gets a chance to and he just doesn't push off on his right leg. Like he's just not. I don't know if it's a calf, hamstring, something like that, but he's not. The explosiveness is not there. Pushing off on that right leg. For Cornell, for me, it's if I told you like a range. If Cornell scores 16 goals against Maryland, who wins?
Cornell.
If Cornell scores 13 goals, who wins?
More of a coin flip, I would say Cornell in like an 13-11 game.
All right, Cornell scores 11 goals. Who wins?
Maryland in a 12-11 game.
Maryland. Cornell scored 13 against Richmond, 11 against Penn State. Basically, they put it at 12. If I gave you out of 100 times Cornell plays Maryland and scores 16 goals, Cornell probably wins what, 95 out of 100? 90 out of 100?
Mm-hmm.
Out of 100 times Cornell plays Maryland with 11 goals or 12 goals. I'm not saying it tilts all the way the other way to Maryland, 90 out of 100, but I think it starts to tilt a lot. Cornell's advantage over Maryland to me was that they could put a number on the board that Maryland's offense just could not match. Maryland just couldn't get to 15 or 16. And the game got to a point, as good as Maryland's defense is, maybe they lose faceoffs. Kirst has a huge game, and the number just doesn't, he just can't get to, Maryland just can't get to that kind of number. I think if you're Maryland and you get Cornell at 11 or 12 goals, you take that every day. That's your game. You take that every day of the week. Because I think if you're Maryland, the confidence you have is if Cornell's scoring 13 against Richmond and 11 against Penn State, what are they doing against Maryland? Now, I don't want to. Richmond and Penn State's defenses are very, very good. So it's not like they're playing bad defenses here. But Maryland's defense is that's what makes this matchup great. It's strength on strength. It's the best offense against the best defense.
Yeah. I think the one thing that Cornell will take heart to, though, is that even though the offense was not there in the first quarter, the 6-goal third quarter, I think, boosts some more confidence into you that we can still put together these big runs. So I think, and I think that was the case too last week with Richmond. It was they got to 13, but that's because, again, 2-goal first quarter. Even the Albany game, only 5 goals in the first half. If you're Cornell, you got to say, well, we've been able to put goals in the cage like we have been in the regular season in the second half. We just got to put together a full 60 minutes. If we do what we've been doing in these second halves in these 3 games and do it the full 60, then we can still be the same offense we've been all year. But the thing is, they've got to get to a fast start on Monday because you can't have the starts that they had against Albany or Richmond or Penn State against Maryland, which we saw today with Maryland-Syracuse.
And the other thing about the 5-6 goal run is what team is probably better than anybody at, I would say,
not having those runs.
Yes, Maryland limits damage better than anybody. Cuse had that 3-goal run in the middle of the game, and you were like, okay, they're kind of got some momentum here. Against another team, that 3-goal run might go to 6, and it might be a 2-goal game. Maryland they limit damage. And for Cornell, if you want to take the pessimistic side, I would say is, okay, if we take a 6-goal run out of it, if we say your 6-goal run is not going to happen, 5-goal run not going to happen, and you have to string possessions together against Maryland, and you have to put like 2 goals in a 5-possession span, 3 goals in 6, Can you do that? If the offense is more quiet, that's where if the 5-goal run doesn't come and you just got to score 3, 4 each quarter, that's what Maryland does. Hughes scores 1 goal and then doesn't score for 20 minutes. So I think Mark has it somewhere between 10 and 16 goals. Yeah, is where this is decided. There's a number for Maryland that if Maryland hits it, they're going to feel really confident. I do think this is a game where pace is really important. I'll be honest. No, I was not. Yeah, I really didn't have. I mean, just from a fan perspective, I never really had much doubt at any point of that game.
Yeah, and I didn't really have any confidence in that point either, to be fair as well.
Yeah. All of these games so often come down to clearing, riding, the middle of the field, things like that. Cornell has a good ride. Maryland is probably the best clearing team in the country. Is there anything there? Maryland is not going to... This is what Cornell does. Penn State did a great job of this for a lot of the game, but eventually they kind of made some mistakes, and they gave Cornell some transition opportunity. Maryland is not going to ride Cornell. I can promise that right now. Maryland is going to go into like a deep zone, and they are going to get back on defense, and they're going to say, beat us 6-on-6. Like, we're not going to try and play any games with giving Cornell transition, because that's Cornell's game. Maryland's going to try and sit back, and they're just going to say, we're going to play. We like our defense. We're going to play defense. I think more than the Syracuse-Maryland game, I do think pace and the style of game is really important here. If this game is run and gun, I do think that's what Cornell would like. I think it does give Maryland opportunities, which is something to look for, but I do not think Maryland wants Cornell in transition. And Maryland does a great job, probably better than anybody. Go watch Maryland's attack when they have to go back in the hole. Guys like Spanos and Kelly. Watch the defense that they play getting back on transition and filling in the hole so that you can't get a transition look. Maryland's attack are very defensively responsible, and I think that's a real advantage they have. If this game is played like the third quarter, not even just in the run, but the pace of the game, Cornell gets some transition opportunities. They kind of put the pedal down. I think that's Cornell. If this game is played the way it was in the first, second, and fourth quarter, I feel like that's right up Maryland's alley. And Maryland probably can do what Penn State did better than Penn State did. So goalie play. Which Nuss do we get? Do we get Nuss that we saw in the quarterfinal or the Nuss that we saw on Saturday? The Nuss that plays on Saturday gives Cornell every chance to win this game. Maybe with that performance, they do win this game. The Nuss that plays on Wyatt Nuss makes 5 saves on Memorial Day. Cornell ain't winning. So I think more than anything, I feel like that's where this game is probably decided, is the middle of the field. The hustle plays. Penn State was first half. Penn State that was what I kind of talked about in the I said in the group chat. Penn State won the hustle plays in the first half. They won ground balls. They won a lot of runouts. Cornell's advantage was that Nust was terrific, and I said whichever one flips wins the game. Nust wasn't as good as he was. Yeah, Nust wasn't as good as he was in the first half, but he was fine. Cornell started winning the hustle plays in the second half. They got to ground balls.
Cornell was getting completely burnt on ground balls that first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
They were Penn State was winning every ball that was on the carpet, but then Cornell flipped the script on that, and then they were the first to every ground ball.
Yep,
and that's the margin that determined this game.
100%. And so I think that's first time grounders. Every chance Maryland can get to get the ball off the carpet, get it out against Cornell, one and done. Keep them. Don't let them get 2 to 3 possessions in a row. Maryland is deep at D mid. So the more Maryland can have those D mids fresh and healthy for the fourth quarter, that's if Maryland can have it be where they're the Poles, Larkin and McDonald, and then their top shorty. If they could run Larkin, McDonald, and Kohler and those guys for as many possessions possible in the fourth quarter, they're in good shape. And then on the flip side for Maryland, if Maryland's offense could get second chance opportunities and just run Cornell down, I think Cornell's a little bit thinner. I think at the rope unit, things like that. If Maryland's just kind of, it's not going to be. It ain't going to be. We've seen Memorial Days where I don't want to forget the one Maryland played against Virginia, where it was like a freaking oven at Baltimore. It was like 105 degrees on the field. That one's going to take it out of you. It'll be, I think, better weather to Monday in Foxborough than it was today, which was very cool, and then showers. Yeah, on and off. I think it's looking like high of 65. I mean, high of 65.
It's not weather to go out to the beach in Cape Cod and set up your tent. That's for sure.
But you can still body blow a team. You can still make their shorties work, which we've seen Cornell do it with how they've had these long possessions to take it out of you. So that's, I think, Maryland's strategy is more. I think both of these teams, these are the two best teams for a reason. They're not going to try. I don't think they're going to try and do anything out of their ordinary. I think it's going to be who can just put the game to their most of their liking, and who can kind of enforce their will on the other more.
Yeah, and this is a year that's been wide open, but there was that one toppish tier. It was Cornell, it was Maryland, it was Princeton. So it only makes sense to have a Cornell-Maryland national championship game, I think. Before we get into who we will pick and everything, got to give a shout out to the women. Obviously, we would love to do more women's coverage, but just for the lack of time of being able to
Bill Simmons,
handle both the men and women. But
if Bill Simmons at the Ringer wants to, Safe is like I think is like mutuals with Chris Ryan on Twitter. If the Ringer, if Bill Simmons and the Ringer want to pay us to do full-time lacrosse coverage so we can quit our jobs, I don't know.
You have to match the salary and benefits of the New York City Department of Education. So that might be a tough ask for them.
Maryland and New York are pretty good states as far as benefits for teachers go. You gotta
more likely than not, I'm not quitting my day job. Sorry. Teaching's an awesome gig. But yesterday, speaking of awesome, if you like what you've been hearing all evening long, give us that like button.
Smash the like button.
And hit subscribe too. But last night, tale of two totally different games. UNC completely annihilates Florida in the first semifinal. And then we figured it was going to be the three-horse show of UNC, Boston College, and Northwestern. And Northwestern with a wild comeback in the fourth quarter. It looked like BC had them dead to rights. They had the home field advantage at Gillette Stadium. 1 sec. I was asking if you had day.
Someone asked us if we had day jobs. It's like, hell yeah, brother.
Yeah.
I'll be there
that's
Tuesday
why I
morning.
do Saturdays these days.
Listen, brother, I'll be there. I'm back in Tuesday morning. I'll either be really freaking happy or really bummed out.
But yeah, so BC had Northwestern dead to rights, had the crowd completely on their side. Very great turnout, over 10K there at Gillette Stadium, but very much a lot of neon BC shirts there.
Biggest crowd.
And then he came back and took that game and closed it out, which was something. Now their tests, they got to turn around and face a UNC team that has been an absolute wagon. But at the same token, it's a UNC team that has had disappointments with the expectations on them in the title game. So going to be very interesting to see if UNC can close out and put up the 22-0 perfect season, or if Northwestern gives them the one loss in the home of the stadium of the team that had the most famous one loss, the New England Patriots. So going to be a very fascinating title game tomorrow.
I only caught the second game, the back end of the second game. I mean, Carolina scoring whatever they did against, like not 18 straight goals against Florida is just insane. It's hard to see them losing, I would say. BC is just such a buttoned up, well-oiled, machine in a lot of ways. They're so good at the situations, and their defense is usually so good. But BC really the game got sloppy in the fourth quarter, and I think that played to Northwestern's advantage. from what I saw. I haven't seen a lot of these teams, but in the past when I've seen BC, that's always such a hallmark of them. But I feel like Northwestern kind of thrived a bit in the chaos, and Delaney Schweitzer made some big saves for Northwestern to get them over the hump. And man, Boston. The last time, here's your stat of the weekend. The last time Boston College didn't play in the national championship game, there was no shot clock in men's or women's lacrosse. So hat tip to them.
That predates finally getting Lauren Costello of BC Hall of Fame.
The women's lacrosse
on the women's lacrosse special.
Brother, if y'all know that reference, you've been here since day one, and I love you. The famed women's lacrosse podcast of summer 2017. God, that was so long ago. Ryan does know
We've
women.
Been at this right too long.
Ryan does know women.
Also, if you recognize that reference, you've been here for a long time.
Yes, you have. But if you're a new listener, we love you as well. The chat's been awesome today. So I'll probably take UNC, but there is sometimes with the women's Final Four. I know Maryland's had lost to UNC a couple times when they were a big favorite, undefeated. UNC, I remember I went to the one in 21 where they were huge favorites and lost to Boston College in the semifinals. So stuff can happen, but I'll probably fit UNC. I hope it's a good crowd. Again, I mean, it was a record biggest crowd in 20 years. So I hope we get another pretty good one.
Yeah, might be a little bit of a dip with no BC, but you do also get the crowd for the D2 and D3 men's finals right after too, so that should help buoy that. Plus, I think a lot of people are going there for the whole weekend too. I know a couple, friends of mine that played women's lacrosse in college, were bringing their families up for it, and it looked like they're in it for the whole long haul for the weekend, and they were really there for the women's Final Four, not for the men's Final Four. So I have a feeling like you're going to still have a very good crowd tomorrow. I think the women's lacrosse Final Four always delivers too. It's one of the best products the NCAA has.
100%.
So I think we're in for a good one tomorrow. And lastly, we did quite a bit of previewing the Cornell and Maryland. So for the sake of time, I know my family's getting a little famished. So Cornell, Maryland, I think we know our predictions here. We've had this as our title game since the beginning. I don't think we're budging from our title predictions, but stick with Cornell over Maryland. I think Maryland's been much improved during this tournament. I think shown peaking at the right time. But again, I think this Cornell team, as much as they haven't been as dominant in this tournament as they have been in the regular season, I think as you put it with this game today, they're finding different ways to win. And I think that's a scary sight for everybody else that they've been playing, where they could have a game where CJ Kurtz is getting double bageled. They could have a game where they're not, having their best day on offense, which is their big strength, and still finding ways to win with their goaltending, with their defense improving. So I think that versatility that Cornell is showing this month, ever since the Ivy League tournament, where they can still boat race. You saw that against Princeton, but they can eke out these wins like against Penn State. I think we're in for a really, really good one. I don't think it's going to be – I think your margin of victory is going to be 2 or less, no matter which way it goes. I think Maryland's got a very good shot at winning this too. And either way, I would not be shocked at the outcome of who wins this one. But I'll stick to what I had at the beginning. And I think this Cornell team's the one that has the magic and goes down in history in Ithaca and comes away with the natty.
So I had Cornell ahead of Maryland. I had Cornell as my national championship pick at the start of the year. At the start of the tournament, I had Maryland over Cornell. So I've been kind of on the money on that one. I'm going to go Maryland. Listen, to go off Ryan's point about the quality of this game, so much has been done about Maryland and, the Monday thing, and people are going to bet. There's so ment things to mention. I get it. When you go from a team that plays as well as they do the semifinals to the championship, it naturally draws. Why? Quint mentioned depth a lot. I don't know, man. The deepest Maryland team ever was 22. The second deepest Maryland team ever was 16, and they lost to Carolina. So the 2016 Maryland team was significantly deeper than the 2017 Maryland team, which won the title. So I don't know. Is Tillman's advantage on a day's rest much minimized? 100%. Yes. There's no There's not as much. There's way less prep done for Monday than Saturday. But I just put it this way. Sometimes I think the easiest explanation is when Maryland. This is Maryland's 5th championship game as a top 3 seed. Before that, they're 2-2. The 2 wins were obviously 17-22, and then they lost in 16 to Carolina, one of the great games ever in overtime, and they lost in 21 to Virginia in another classic by 1 goal. So they've played 4. They've played 4 as a elite team, a team that you would have expected at the start of the tournament to get there, and they're 2-2. 21 against Virginia, were they the better team? Maybe. Virginia played great on Monday. They were a worthy champion. That was an all-time just titanic game. Carolina's the one you probably hold against them. I'm still not over that. I don't know if I ever will be. Look, I think you can justifiably say, listen, Carolina was an unseeded team. You should have won as the 1 seed. Fair. Kyle Bernlohr saved 35 or something % on championship weekend. He was nowhere near the Kyle Bernlohr he had been for his whole career, aside from the 1 save he made at the end of the game. If Kyle Bernlohr plays like Kyle Bernlohr, Maryland probably wins. 2011 against Virginia, they were unseeded. Maybe that one you could point out that was probably a pick'em game there, and it was 6-6 in the 4th quarter at one point. So, but Virginia was a perennial Final Four team at that point, and they had Steele Stanwick and all those guys. 2012 against Loyola. Loyola won 15-1 or 18-1, something like that, something crazy. Forget it.
Loyola, the most underappreciated national championship season. By the way, 100%. That team was nuts that season, and
they had I will still maintain. Maryland 22 and Notre Dame 24 were pretty good as well. But I would say maybe the best defensive Final Four ever. Loyola allowed 8 goals on championship weekend in 2012. It was nuts. 2015, Maryland lost to Denver. Denver was the best team that year. That was a tremendous Denver team. That was Bill Tierney's lone title at Denver. Last year against Notre Dame. Dude, I mean, come on, man. I don't know. I just think they're 0-4 when they've been a 6 seed or lower in the championship game. How many teams seeded 6th or lower win the national championship? So I don't know. That's my view.
Yeah, I mean, and I think to that point, though, you can't hold it against Tillman if they lose on Monday either, because Cornell's looked like the best team. I know it's been debated, but you could argue that that this Cornell team.
I don't know if you can hold it against them. I would say this is one where, listen, you have the team that can do it. And if you have the team that can do it, and you're Tillman, you have your record in May. This is one I'll say. This is one I'll personally say I really want. I mean, I really, really want to get this one because I think it'd be. 2017 was relief, and that was finally, and that was a great team. 22 was just
and 22 was easy.
That was they're all undefeated. It was a classic season. This would be just this has been vintage Maryland all year. This would just be they just played like Maryland and they won the national title. So this one would be a lot. I hope it happens. If it doesn't, listen, hats tip to Cornell.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that's also erring me too in terms of the 2-day turnaround thing, looking at this season, I know it's completely different teams, but one thing to take a note to, Big Ten tournament, Maryland loses to Ohio State, gives up 14. Cornell, conversely, 2 days rest, goes against Princeton and puts up a 20 number. Now, keep in mind, Princeton's defense, nowhere near Maryland's defense. But the one cause for concern maybe for Maryland is you gave up 14 to an Ohio State team whose hallmark is not exactly offense. But again, Maryland's playing a lot better since that Big Ten tournament. So going to be a very fascinating national championship game. And I think whoever wins this game is going to go down as, winning one of the biggest tests that they could have in a national title game. Because this is these are the two best teams. Yeah. 1 versus 2, first time in 20 years. We don't often get it. We have games between. There's been national championships where I think you definitely say those were the 2 best teams. Notre Dame and Duke maybe in 23. Though Virginia there was a kind of like a troika there. Duke and Yale in 2018 I think were clearly the 2 best teams. Maryland and Ohio State in 2017 was one. There's been some others if you go back in the past, but often we've said that 2 seeds sometimes get upset, and it's that 3 seed that comes through. So Maryland and Virginia did feel like the 2 best teams in 21. But
Syracuse has had some years where they weren't the one, but during Desco and got there, and it was, the Hopkins played against Hopkins and things like that. So
yeah, Hopkins felt like, even with Duke out of the picture, it felt like, even though Duke was the better team, that felt like the Titanic matchup.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't happen often, 1 versus 2, so it's something to appreciate. And yeah, very excited for it. All right, before we run out, again, smash the like button. Subscribe if you have not. We're at 94 subscribers. We're close to 100. Getting to 100 would be cool. So thank you guys. Attendance 31,524. It ranks 15th. So my over under 34,000 whiff.
I win. I put under.
Maybe I should stop making predictions regarding Northeast Final Fours. True East Hartford has still never been tried.
Yes.
Since the NCAA moved, so this is from Patrick Stevens. Since the NCAA moved the event off campus to pro stadiums in 2003, it is behind Philly the last 2 years, but it is ahead of obviously both East Hartford years. It's also ahead of the last 2 Foxborough crowds, and it's ahead of 2014, 2015, and 2013. So in the last 10-ish years, it's fifth out of I want to say 11. So basically right in the pack. AF Health asks, do you think the attendance is bigger on Monday? Attendance is
usually Monday goes down. Yeah, it goes down.
Yeah, because people are ahead. One, you have 2 teams compared to 4. Usually folks got to head out. I don't think it'll drop too much, though. I will say 30,000 somewhere in that. A little smidge, but a little bit of a drop off. And yes, we finally got it. They announced the 2026
the Southern Final Four.
Yes. Charlottesville is the furthest. The only time the Final Four has been south of Baltimore, it's been in Charlottesville.
Maybe they could get the Dave Matthews Band to perform in between games. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Make it so like have a Dave show like as part of the entertainment as like post game concert, hometown DMB performance.
That'd be interesting.
Get some DMB equivalent, some folksy rock act. Make it into a festival of some sort.
I think there's stuff. I think they need to lean. I mean, listen, I support the movement to make the championship a week later, not just because it probably would give Maryland like 3 more national titles, but I think that the Final Four should be a festival. It should be a celebration of lacrosse. I think having the women there with the men is a positive.
That makes it awesome. Having the men and women at the same place. So I think once the current things are up, I think we've seen enough proof of concept here with these Foxborough Final Fours.
Well, next year,
the men and women at the same place.
Next year it's going to be. I think the next 2 years are the women are in the Union, the MLS Stadium. Now I think it's one. I think Philly's next year and Foxborough is I think Philly's 27 because next year is obviously.
Let me look real quick.
I think 27 is Philly. And I think 28 is Foxborough. So, listen, you know me, man. I'm not impartial, but I'm objective.
Yeah, let me see future dates real quick. Yeah, so it's at actually next year it's in Chicago.
Yes, yeah. Next year is in 27, 26 is in Northwestern, and 27 and 28, I believe, are at the Union Stadium, right?
Yep, but they're at the Union Stadium. Yep.
I will say this. I mean, look, we're gonna get this long time. I agree with a March to June season. What I will say is, if we're just gonna keep playing the championship 2 games in 3 days, dude, could you imagine a June national championship game on Monday when it's 90 degrees? When it's 90 degrees, like, oh man. I mean, the product would be, the season would be better. The championship game would be worse. If we can make it worse, that's how. So I support June if we can like decouple, as they've said, the championship from the.
And it can only be 1 week later. We cannot go into the second week of June.
No, probably not. But yeah, if we could get March and we could get more midweek games, I'd support that. But this is probably not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think that's it.
Yeah, my family's starving. Gotta feed them.
All right.
So again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll see how our Memorial Days are going, if we're busy or not with doing post game after Monday, but we'll definitely have post game content somewhere. Jake, you want to add on?
Yes. One, thank you guys for this all season. These power. I love these powers. We all do. They just got more fun and more fun towards the end of the year as more of you guys are in the chat and chatting. I think
it's been so much fun with the interactions with the chat too. So
yeah, like I think our goal with this is to make this a place where people can come talk lacrosse. And if this is a place where you can come do that, because there's not a lot of opportunity, there's less, I mean, Twitter, but like Twitter's, it's Twitter. Like, so there's a place outside of that where you can go and talk lacrosse. That's what we want. And we're glad, really proud that if we've been able to do that and that you guys have enjoyed these shows. And we are so grateful to you guys for taking time in your Saturday evenings to watch and listen and interact and subscribe and all that stuff. So thank you guys so much. It means the world. And then, yes, like, subscribe, notifications, and then comment who you think is going to win the national championship. There you go. Put that in the comments when the goes live. We will see you on Monday. But if we're not here on Monday, thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's been amazing. And hope for a great championship on Monday. So there you go. That's your comment. Who do you think is going to win? Cornell-Maryland.
Yeah, simple prompt. Only 2 answers.
There you go.
So thank you all for watching and listening as always, and catch you on the flip side. It's not that hot for a Memorial Day weekend, but still got to stay hydrated.
Becky Lynch for president. Enjoy this outro.
Yes.
Ford, Honda, Chevy, Beamers, and minivans, over 600 cars, trucks, SUVs. Are you listening, man? Let Eastern Motors put you in a car today. Let Eastern Motors finance it all the way.